The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.
So joined now today by Conleith Gilligan and Kyle Coney to look ahead to Galway versus Tyrone in the opening round of the All-Ireland series, which gets underway this Saturday at 5:15 in Pearse Stadium. A massive game to look forward to for both teams. This game being live streamed on GAA Go. Lads, it is the start of the All-Ireland series. Are you looking forward to the All-Ireland series now, Kyle?
I suppose we can probably look at it that it's the start of the championship now, really. I know we had spoke there a few minutes ago about provincial champions and finalists and stuff like that. There being no really, yes, they have silverware underneath them, but there's no real benefit to being winners as such. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the group stages work. And I know that there's been a lot of talk of people saying that, there's going to be dead rubbers and there's going to be this and that, but I'll be honest, I totally love watching football. Like I could watch football morning, noon and night, so I'm looking forward to seeing the games. I'm looking forward to seeing what way teams react till I know we've had the Super 8s previously, but like it'll be interesting. We have teams obviously in different groups, winners and losers, dropping in and up, dropping out, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to the Tyrone and Galway game, obviously being a Tyrone man and having been laid off for 5 weeks. It'll be interesting to see where they're at and what kind of preparation they've done.
It's kind of very much a thing, Conleith. The narrative is out there. 24 games to eliminate 4 teams, and that's people's a lot of narrative that they can't understand that there's 3 teams coming out of a group. But with that, we have to see how this plays out. Like, we've never had a structure like this in the championship before.
I think you have to give it a chance. It does sound a bit ridiculous that you can lose 2 games, win 1 and qualify. It does sound ridiculous, but what they were trying to protect was, as Kyle talked about, the dead rubbers. And like on the last game, the difference between finishing second and finishing third is massive. So if you look at one of those groups, you're going to have like a Kerry or a Mayo in second. For you to finish third, to have to go there, that's a big, big challenge for anybody that wants to sort of progress. So I think it means every game's important, but the first games, if you lost them, you're under a wee bit of pressure. It will take a couple of teams to cause an upset. So, for example, if Tyrone go and beat Kerry, which may or may not be an upset, if Mayo beat Kerry, Tyrone beat Galway and if Mayo beat Kerry, suddenly those groups open up. If Mon turn over Derry, and it remains to be seen how that all plays out. Is the advantage for the team that's been getting regular football at a really good standard, or is the advantage for the team that's been off 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah, just with that, Kyle, I was just saying there, we lost Conleith, but we seem to have him back now. But just on that, Kyle, what's the kind of mood like in Tyrone going into this game now on Saturday?
It's very hard to gauge at the moment. Previously we would you would probably had a backdoor game at this stage, and it's been a lengthy period of time off. I'm sure they've been away on a training camp. I don't know if they've played any challenge games. Normally you get a whimper or something. I haven't heard much, if they've played anybody at all. So obviously the last game was against Monaghan, and it was a game of 2 halves. Really, really positive of the
How
first.
How frustrated were you going away from that game?
I actually don't think. I think people's looking at the game a wee bit differently. Where whenever you watch the game back, Tyrone had chances at the start of the second half. Had those 1 or 2 chances that they did have go over the bar, then all of a sudden they don't start dropping off Rory Beggan's kickouts, and him pinging the ones about 50 metres, then that automatically invites pressure, and it's so hard to turn that tide. Team coming at you, you giving up the kick out, and then teams coming at you, piling the pressure. It was really, really difficult to turn that tide, and that was something that Tyrone had to do. They had to, and I know I did say at that time I wouldn't have been taking Matty Donnelly off the pitch, because it was someone who was really, beneficial to them. He has that know-how, he has the experience in the game, but you'd be frustrated in the fact that they played so well in the first half, and coming out in the second half they didn't dominate in the way that we thought. They made a run out, 6 or 7 point winners, but that was credit to Monaghan that they hung on in there. They weathered the storm, and they got the goal at the end. But I'm looking forward to seeing if Tyrone can put that performance of the first half into a 55-60 minute performance that'll get them over the line, because we know what this Galway team have to offer. Like they're a serious athletic team. They have plenty of scoring forwards, and as I say, up top they can, like, if Damien Comer and Matthew Tierney, and I know there was a bit of talk about Shane Walsh last year that wasn't performing, but if he knuckles the head down and says to tell the people that was doubting them, I'll show you, Tyrone could be in for a tough time.
What's your own view, Conleith, where Tyrone are at the minute?
Look, Tyrone looked as good as they'd looked for a long time in the first half. Darragh Canavan, Darren McCurry, Con Kilpatrick, did all the top players in their positions. They completely dominated midfield. That really destroyed Began's kickouts, and probably it was their inefficiency in front of goal, which was the big problem at half time. They should have been out of sight. The game should have been over. I think overall their shot to score ratio was 53%. On that day, Monaghan's was 75 or 76%. So that was the big difference. They had the chances and they didn't convert them. And when you let Monaghan live in the game, they're always going to come back at you, because they'll not day out. And once momentum shifted towards Monaghan, Tyrone couldn't get it back. And again, I agree with Kyle. Like, Matty Donnelly's one of those players you don't take off, because even when he's not been effective in the game, he's still organising. He's still taking one of their better markers because of the fear they still have on him. He still holds that fear factor. So I thought that was strange, and probably played in. Probably for me, the winning of the game might have been Darren Hughes was in all sorts of trouble. He gets a dead leg and has to go off. Kieran Hughes comes on and wins 3 out of the next 5 kickouts. And that really gave Monaghan a platform to push on, because at that stage, nobody was fit to get in front of him. Him and Began were telepathic in terms of where the kickouts were going.
It also pushed Conor McCarthy to wing back. Yeah,
massive. It didn't just work the same way against Derry, but that Tyrone game, it really swung. You're right.
It's different if Matty Donnelly had been injured or hadn't been playing well. He kicked 3 points. He scored our only fisted point in the second half of this. He was actually playing well. We took Michael McKiernan off as well. I know there might have been, but some of the calls were, I didn't see them coming. And to me, the Matty Donnelly one seemed like it was preempted. That was right. Matty gets the 50th or whatever minute it was. He needs to come off because he might only last that length of time. You have to judge. You might have preempted subs, or you might have them worked out in your head. But if the game's going the way it is and a man's playing so well, you've got to change it.
It is still all Ireland contenders, Conleith.
I think they're probably just, well, for me, they're out of that top bracket until they would show where they're at the moment. Again, hard to know where they're at. Look, I think potentially they could be. You would never rule them out, and they're the one team historically that showed that adversity, they love that. They love people writing them off. They love adversity, and they really revel in it. So they could be. We'll know a lot more after the game on Sunday. If they can go to Salt Hill, put in a big performance, possibly turn over Galway, then absolutely they're in it, because their pole position then to win the group. That's why this game in Salt Hill is so important, because the winner of that, when you're looking down it, you're going, yeah, potentially could win the group. And if that happens, then they're in a really good place. If they happen to lose, you've Armagh coming again, you could finish third, then it leaves it very difficult to win the All-Ireland from third place.
Do they nearly need to prove something in this group, Kyle, to show that they still are All-Ireland contenders?
Oh, absolutely. And, being involved in the Tyrone camp for a number of years, the Conleith pointed it out. Tyrone will have put a siege mentality behind it for 5 weeks. They'll have said the media's writing us off, the country's writing us off. You know, that will be the case. They'll have knuckled down. They'll have got themselves into that mind frame where they'll have got the country against them, and they'll come out swinging. You know, we've seen that the year they won the All Ireland, most recently in 2021, where pulling out of competition and all different types of stuff and saying X, Y, and Z is against us. That will be the case, and they'll come out. You can be sure that there will be a reaction come Sunday or Saturday evening at 5:30. That Tyrone will be. They'll come out to prove a point, and as we've stated a number of times already, winning that first game is crucial because it gives you such an advantage till it takes that pressure off for going into that second game. So I definitely think that it's a must-win game for them, more so than Galway. But we just don't know where they're at the moment because of the layoff.
And just on that siege mentality, Kyle, why do you love it, or where does that come from?
I wish I had that answer. It just seems to be that is the best way Tyrone play their football. Like, we've seen that trying to retain the All Ireland has been so difficult for them. It takes a totally different mindset. It takes a totally different. From what I gather, Tyrone trained every bit as hard in 2022, if not harder. They done things maybe slightly different to freshen the thing up, but there was nothing done any different. But that mentality from being the hunter, to being hunted is totally different. Now they can probably fall into that category again of back again the wall. Everybody's against us. We've been wrote off. We're not All Ireland contenders. Even though we're the last Ulster team till win it most recently. So that's when they play their best football. We look at it down through the years. In the back door, I think they're probably the most successful team. Take away that safety net, you have to win that game on that day, and that's when Tyrone played their best football.
And Colin, just before we bring Darragh in here too as well, can we expect an exciting game between Galway and Tyrone, or could this start off on a similar flow, bit cagey, and both teams kind of grow into it?
Look, I think Galway will want to show their defensive credentials again. They'll want to show that they've really tightened up at the back. So I think it will be that way. For me, it'll be more interesting from a Tyrone point of view, because the last day out, Tyrone played with, the likes of Frank Burns, Michael O'Neill, Kieran McGeary, and a half forward line that looked to be very defensive. Now, the question is, what has happened in the 5 weeks in between? Do they look at maybe going more offensive with the likes of O'Goose? Does Neil Sludden come back? And the quandary of what happens with Cathal McShane. So I think the Tyrone team may change slightly. I think they might maybe go for a wee bit more of an attacking approach, because I think if you go to Galway and you try and sit in, they've had now a full season, nearly 2 seasons of practicing that. They're going to be more adept at it maybe than Tyrone, especially a game away from home where Galway are going to want to really keep it tight for as long as they can.
And Darragh Maloney's here now with us.
The late Darragh Maloney.
but Darragh, is this a game you're looking forward to the weekend, Galway and Tyrone, to get the All Ireland series underway?
Yeah, listen, hugely, Paul. Look, I've really enjoyed watching Galway this year. I've seen them several times, a couple of games in the league, and then, for first game in the championship and stuff like that. And I think they're better than last year. I think there's more depth to their panel now. They've unearthed a lot of new players. That lad Marr, who's from Salthill, Knocknacarra, is very strong, a big lad around the middle of the field. And because if you go back to Galway last year, when the run to the final, you could nearly predict who the first 3 or 4 certainly the first 3 subs were going to be in every game. I just think there's more depth to it now. I'm a big Cian O'Neill fan. Look, let's see about Tyrone. I think losing, as the lads were saying, losing in the Ulster Championship won't have been any harm for Tyrone. They will have been able to get head away and do their work quietly out of the spotlight and out of the media glare. So I think it's going to be a cracking match. And I maybe the home advantage thing, I don't know, but it's going to be a fabulous match. I really and very hard to call for me. really, really difficult to call.
Kai, would you ever have any experiences playing in Salt Hill?
Yeah, played in Salt Hill a few times with Tyrone. Probably more so. I think maybe only twice in the whole time I was playing for Tyrone. I played maybe in Tuam about 5 times. So I've been a bit more accustomed to playing down there. Normally not nice weather. That's what you can expect. Normally a lot of wind, a lot of rain. I'm not sure what the forecast gives for the weekend. I don't think it gives too much rain now, but I haven't had too many experiences of Tuam, just the twice, and one victory and one defeat in the time that I had a more pleasant victories in Tuam now, in fairness.
Yeah, most people come and don't like that breeze in Salt Hill, and it's understandable. Just on that point there, Darragh was mentioning about John Maher, Conleith coming into midfield. He really looks to have added, but there is a decision now for the Galway management this weekend. Paul Conroy obviously misses the Conleith final due to injury. Peter Cook goes out to the middle, has a really good game in the middle. If you're the Galway management there, do you hold Conroy in reserve because you're just thinking of an impact Paul Conroy can have when a game opens up, or does he just have to start?
Yeah, sorry, was that to me?
Yeah, that was to you, Conleith.
Yeah, look, I think Paul Conroy has to start in the middle. Peter Cook's very versatile, and I think Darragh touched on it brilliantly. Had Peter Cook been in the squad last year at the Kerry game, I think we could have had a very different outcome. Like looking at him through the club championship against Glen and Croke Park, he probably was the dominant midfielder on show. Brilliant player, big and strong, can carry a lot of ball, kicks, passes, kicks, scores, and I think he'll probably slot into that half forward line. And the question around is, well, like Matty Tierney can't be dropped after the last day. Johnny Heaney does stuff that probably managers and teammates value, and the question is, do they switch it around? And Shane Walsh, whether he was sick the last day or taken off or what the situation was, is Shane Walsh now become the impact man when you look at that? Ian Burke has been invaluable with his selfless stuff. Finnerday, one of those players for me are going to be dropped because I don't think they can live without Peter Cook, because he's the one player, when you look at Tyrone's middle, of Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick, they need an extra body around the middle because they're not going to win an aerial battle there, I don't think.
Just on, I'm going to bring all you in here because after that Connacht final, there was a lot of criticism about Shane Walsh. Just starting with you, Conleith, like the phrase was used that he was disinterested in the Connacht final. Was that harsh, or do you think there was a point there?
I don't think he was disinterested in the Connacht final. When the big days come, Shane Walsh nearly always turns up. But there is games where he does be ineffective. You look at the All-Ireland semi-final last year against Derry, was completely anonymous. Now, he didn't need to be any better. Then he shows up for the final and he does what he does. So look, he does have those games where he's completely off it. And I don't know if it's disinterest. I wouldn't imagine. He's a winner. He'll want to win there. He'll want to prove himself. Pádraig Joyce did come out and say that he'd been suffering with sickness. So this may be a wee bit unfair to him. But he is a generational talent. He's a player that has to play well for Galway to win the big games. But the question is, they do need impact off the bench. And for me, definitely Peter Cook starts. And it's probably the likes of a Rob Finnerday who would lose out in that situation, or an Ian Burke, because the rest of them are nailed on to start.
And what do you think as the Kilmacud and the long season, Darragh, do you think that could have had some impact on Shane Walsh?
Maybe. Like, it's funny, guys. I saw, I think it was like last August, me and about 49 other people were in Parnell Park last August to see Shane Walsh make his debut for Kilmacud Crokes. And as Conleith says, he's a generational player, and I think he's kind of a bit like David Clifford, the sort of player that people should go and travel to watch play. And I just couldn't believe it down in Parnell Park. There was a handful of people there. It was one of the championship games. It was his debut for Kilmacud, and I just thought, this is ridiculous. Like, why is there nobody here? The second largest club in the country, maybe Kilmacud, and there was nobody at the game. But no, look, that could be a factor. I think do you know what? I think all of the teams are trying to figure out how the hell you manage to peak and hit your peak form for the quarterfinals onwards. Because the rest of this stuff, like, okay, this stuff's important. You want to win the group ideally. You don't want to take risks with second and third, but you want to be hitting your peak form at the quarterfinals. All the other stuff is it's fine. The league, the championship, I think, look, over the last few weekends, and this has been the case for years, the only championship that works is Ulster. The other three, and this is old hat again, but look, I did that Connacht final, and people, I think it's probably unfair people to say Walsh was uninterested or disinterested, but for Galway, they had to prepare in the proper way. They said all the nice things about Sligo, but how do you go into a game that you're going to win? And if you don't win it by 15 points, people are going to hammer you. If you do win it by 15 points, they're going to say, oh, well, that's what you were expected to do. And, I suppose it's just that whole scenario they had to deal with, that the mindset that, we're in a Connacht final. A Connacht medal is an important thing, but we're going to win regardless of what we do. Like, I probably could have played for Galway that day. Oh, maybe that's taking it a bit far. I don't know. But, thanks, lads. That really is supportive.
No backup.
No, leave it there. Just walk away. But do you know what I mean? Listen, Walsh will be flying come quarterfinals onwards. But I do think they're all dealing with something that's very different this year, this new season, and the shape of it, and the extra games, and where you peak. Because there's no point in peaking now. You go back to Mayo, we're flying in the league, but I would argue Kevin McStay needed to do that with a new team, and let's get going. And the break won't have done them any harm either, having lost in Connacht. So, they can go off a bit like Tyrone and do their stuff quietly. Nobody's looking at them. We'll be ready. But I just think there's a whole different set of challenges this year, which they've never had to face before or deal with before. So, I think, listen, you put Walsh in the All-Ireland final and he'd probably do the same thing he did last year against Kerry.
Just there, when you mentioned the Connacht final, do you think Galway can take anything away from that victory against Sligo?
I'm sure they will. There's stuff like, listen, you're talking about players, McDade, Killian McDade, who I love watching. Start of the year, he's playing in the league and he has a very strong, significant brace on his knee. And I'm like, what on earth are they doing? But he obviously had an issue, and then he got injured. Now he came back playing and didn't have the knee brace on. You want to wrap that guy in cotton wool. He's a fantastic player. Johnny Healing has been great. Look, it's just, I suppose they'll be going through their own systems. They'll be going through their own strategies and how do we deal with this and this. I don't look. They won it. I think it's just that kind of a game. I don't think you'll take anything too positive or too negative out of it. It was a game that they had to win. A game that they did win. Move on. More important stuff to come.
Again, just the interesting part about the evolution of Galway this year, and it was interesting that Pádraig Joyce was in Clonus on Sunday, and that in the previous two Connacht games, you did start to see them mirroring what Derry do. They get 4 or 5 inside the 20, they get 2 along either wings, and this is sort of something new, and I'm wondering, was he up there to try and look at that again and see what he could do, because it was very, very noticeable, particularly against Sligo, because they could do what they wanted, but it was noticeable. They get everybody ahead of the ball, they slowed it down and they waited. And, perhaps that doesn't suit a Shane Walsh, because it's very, very regimental. It's very, very controlled, whereas Shane Walsh is probably more instinctive. He wants to kick. He doesn't want to take, the safe option all the time. So I'm just wondering, the fact he was in Ulster for a game that probably doesn't affect him just yet, maybe he was looking to see Derry and up close again just to see how they refine that.
Yeah, I love that, and working with guys like doing commentaries at Enda McGinley, he's all mad into that stuff. Eamon Fitzmaurice, the same thing about how they load that full forward line. And I suppose the elite teams, and Galway are one of them. They'll probably have different times in matches where they'll do different things. They'll attack in a different way. They'll defend in a different way. Like, that's all part of the kind of modern game plan. It's not just the old win your own ball stuff. Let's see what happens. It's all structured. It's regimented. It's practiced over and over again. Like, that's one of the things I love when I watch Derry, as you said, Connacht, to see how they've done this, how they've got to that particular place. And what they're going to do with it. And, like we were talking about last Friday night in Lurgan, about the ball carriers and who's assigned to do that. And then again, the way the defence works, and, nothing is left to chance. And, I think with Cian O'Neill in there, who's an amazing coach, they're adding all these bits to their arsenal as they go along through the year.
And by the way, Darragh, did you tip Derry with me, or were you one of the people against me in the whole room? I can't remember.
I can't, but look, if it makes you feel better, I tipped Derry. No, I listen. Normally, what happens with me, if I tip somebody, you go really strong the other way. I'm just a disaster. So nobody wants me to tip them in any way, and nobody cares what I think anyway. But yeah, no, I loved the game. It was gripping TV. I got to see it, so it was an astonishing drama.
Just with that, Kyle, when you see Shane Walsh, particularly, there was criticism coming from on the Sunday game. But now when you see Galway facing Tyrone, is there an element of fear that Walsh is going to be out to perform this weekend now against Tyrone?
From a Tyrone point of view, you would hope not, but I would safely say that that he's had a few weeks till, from the Connacht final, he's a few weeks to get over the sickness, which I do think that had a huge part to play in why the performance and how he was going about his business in the Connacht final. I know Shane Walsh, he does get he will be the man who the Tiger will be picking up the whole time, and he'll be when a Galway team's set up, him and Damien Comer are the number one and number two players who, that's if you go a long way of putting your Tigers on them, stopping them, you go a long way of winning the game. I know Matthew Tierney's coming into his own now, which makes a huge difference. Gives Galway another string to their bow. But from Shane Walsh's point of view, I know that you have spoke about putting. I know that Derry do it. They push 4 inside, but if I'm reading the Derry game plan right, that pushing the 4 inside is to free up the wings for Shane McGuigan to come on the loop. Ethan Doherty to run the balls hard down the wing, Paul Cassidy to come off the other side, and Ethan Doherty to come off where he likes shooting on his right hand side over on his left foot. So, if Galway are doing something like that, Shane Walsh will need to be the person, on the left side coming. I know he can shoot off either foot, so it makes probably no difference to what side he is, but there will be loads of different game plans. Teams will have different setups for different parts of the game, where if they're 2 points down, it'll be a totally different tactic from where they're 2 points up. So from a Shane Walsh point of view and a Tyrone point of view, looking in, you would have to be fearful that he will be out to show, what he can do, because that criticism will have hurt him. I did listen to the podcast last year with BBC and Thomas Niblock, and there's absolutely no doubt that the fella's a winner. He goes till long depths, and he does a lot of research and a lot of things into his own game where, if he wasn't interested in winning, he wouldn't be doing those sorts of things. And just by listening to him and the way he carries himself, I know that when he was away on holidays, he came back and he beat his previous fitness test to play that first week for Galway. So, if you're not interested, you're not doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, it definitely did maybe seem like harsh criticism overall. And with that, Kyle, you're talking about Shane Walsh, they were probably trying when he came back initially to play him inside, but since that now they've tried to play Shane Walsh at 11, so they're obviously going trying to get him on the ball as much as possible and probably be that link from defence to attack.
It's really, Shane Walsh is a player that when you're talking about a forward, or you're talking about certain players in certain teams, and if he's playing top of the right or top of the left, that's his position. You work the ball, tell them to come on the loop. If it's Paddy McBeardy for Donegal, he's hanging back, he's coming on the loop. That's the game plan. That's how they do it. With Shane Walsh, he can do it all. Like, he can come and he can pick the ball up on his own 45. He can deliver the ball with left or right. He can beat 2 or 3 men. He can get back on the end of it and kick it over the bar, or he can be the man inside, winning the initial ball, taking you on either. So, from a Tyrone point of view, I think we would rather if he was closer to goal, because it would give us a better chance of doubling up, getting more bodies around him, snuffing him out. If I seen him lining out, with 13 on his back and roaming around the middle of the field, there's not too many, that has the ability to stay with him. Maybe Conor Miller, if he's out around that part of the world, that would be Tyrone's designated tiger around that area. So I would be more fearful if I seen him out around the middle, getting on ball, linking up play, because that's we seen last year in All-Ireland final. That's where he's most dangerous. But I think facing the goals, he's a totally different player than with his back to goals.
Conleith, just when we were talking about Galway's midfield scenario, it's probably a difficult decision. As you said, one of those forwards will probably miss out this weekend, but to still have the impact to come on. The back six looks pretty set. You'd probably say it's going to be the same back six to start against Sligo. But from being with Kilcoo and being with different teams as a coach, is switching your goalkeeper an issue? Because with Galway, we've seen it. It went to Conor Gleeson, to Bernie Power, to Conor Gleeson. Like, do you think that's, when you look at Galway, is that one area where you're still not sure, or do you think it's not as much as an issue as people talk about?
Yeah, I think it's a massive issue. They're two great goalkeepers, but in terms of the psychology of goalkeeping, if you don't think you're the main man, well, then you're always doubting yourself. Every time you give away a kick out, you know the pressure's on you the next day. And again, like, if it's a game was going to be kick outs and it's off the tee, for me, it's Bernie Power. The overall goalkeeping of Conor Gleeson is probably that wee bit better. You know, under the high ball, he's been very vulnerable. But I think that's maybe circumstance, maybe more so than actually his inability. The goals that he did concede against Armagh last year and this year have been at situations where the ball has come right under the bar and he hasn't been able to jump and come out for it. You know, in the last time out in Croke Park in the league final, he done really well under high ball. So I think he's a better overall goalkeeper, but I think Bernie Power is probably better off the tee. But I think the rest of the defence will see where it's at. But I think for kickouts, for example, every goalkeeper's got their own wee intricacies, and if you don't know from one week to the other, and maybe look, Galway are very fluid and they tell the team a week out and they're working on it with that guy, that's fine. But if they're leaving it to the Thursday night and the two people are guessing, I think it's very hard to get your kick-out strategy just absolutely nailed on, because you look at all the other teams in the country now that Cluxton's back for Dublin. There's no switching of goalkeepers. You know, Ethan Rafferty, McCluskey, you know, all the top teams, their goalkeepers are set in stone and there's no chopping and changing. So I think that is an issue for Galway.
Do you see them sticking with Conor Gleeson now this weekend?
The danger with sticking with Conor Gleeson is that his short kick-out range isn't as good as Bernie Power's, and across the middle where you have Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick, you're not going to out-catch them. So if Tyrone can force them to go long, they've got a real big advantage in that. But look, their provincial final was the biggest game of their season at that stage to date, and he went with Gleeson. So there's nothing, and Gleeson done nothing wrong, so there's nothing to suggest that he won't stay there.
It just feels like, Darragh, if they went to switch it again, both players surely then don't know where they are actually at in this squad.
Yeah.
As Conleith was saying there, that goalkeeper, well, he wants to be the main man. He wants to be number one. Like, if you switch again, it's both players haven't played 2 games each in this championship.
I absolutely, listen, Conleith would know an awful lot more about it than I would in terms of picking teams and dealing with, you know, 2 human beings who want to be the first choice. And it's interesting. I would agree completely with what Conleith says about their, you know, Power and Gleeson's abilities and their respective strengths. Like, I'm just wondering, and if I may ask Conleith a question, which do you think is the more important? Is it the ability off the tee, or is it the ability under the high ball? Which would you go for?
Yeah, look, for me, it's off the tee all day. The way modern football has went now, possession is key. And if a team can get it, if you can force a team to kick a 50-50 and you can win it down the middle, they're not set up. And that's the time they're most vulnerable, if you force them to go long. So for me, like, I think whichever goalkeeper is able to get his kick outs away, I think that'll go a long way, because you know Niall Morgan is going to be precision. Like, Tyrone know what he's going to do. If he has to go long, it's 70 metres, you know, so it takes out a lot of danger. Gleeson has got a bigger boot, but definitely I think Bernie Power's got a wee bit more precision.
Yeah, and actually it's funny you mentioned about Stephen Cluxton. Like, the one thing that Dublin will not have been happy with about on Sunday was their long kickouts. Like, I think they were 1 out of 5 on the long ones on Sunday, and you're going, hang on a minute, this is the guy who nearly invented the thing, and certainly fine-tuned it. But yeah, look, absolutely, if you can force the fella to go long and it's a 50-50 thing, the only, I suppose, look, they have a lot of big men are in the middle, but like, why take the chance and why leave it to chance if you can get somebody to guarantee the shorter ball? And as you say, with Niall Morgan, he'll just be perfection itself at the weekend.
What's more important for you, Kyle?
Yeah, I would be under the same thought process as Darragh and Conleith both. That ability to set the ball down and find that mid-range kick is probably the kick at the moment that sets up most attacks and where teams get most of the scores. And that mid-range kick is where you would have your say your halfback just tuck. Probably nearly a lot of teams are going with nearly like a player on the outside of the line. And if a team's going zone, it goes over their head with a run onto it, and that initially starts your attack. And that's one kick out that Niall Morgan is absolutely fantastic at. Stephen Cluxton, we know that famous one where he hit Brian Hard and Jackie McCaffrey. So that was probably slightly longer, but those are the kickouts. So that mid-range kick is probably key at the moment. And that one, that getting it off the tee as quick as possible and getting your team started and getting the attack away would be more vital than the ball coming underneath the crossbar. I know we've seen a few games this year where it has caused a bit of an issue. Ethan Rafferty, I felt, was under a wee bit of stress at the weekend as well. A couple, I'm not sure what it was with him. You know, when it was drifting towards the back post, he seemed to lost the flight of it. And for a man who played a lot of football in around the middle of the field and half forward, would have been usually catching balls. It was unusual, but I know it did cause him a wee bit of bother against the Antrim game as well. But he's actually perfected his kickers really, really well as well. So it's getting the ball, getting it down, getting it out will be as vital as anything, you know, because teams will be looking at their stats from where they're getting their scores from, and if they're getting scores from their own kick out, they're on a big part to winning the game.
Yeah, and the one other thing about Galway playing Tyrone, Niall Morgan is going to drift inside the 50-metre line to cut out an area for kick out. So not only will it be man-to-man in some cases, but Tyrone will overload. They'll put a line of 4 across the front, a line of 4 across the middle, and Niall Morgan there. So it's actually going to be more difficult than ever because not every team pushes the goalkeeper up, but Tyrone will.
And then the speed of it as well, lads. I think, you know, if you look at certain goalkeepers, you can read where they're going to put it. You know, and again, we're used to Morgan and Cluxton particularly, and kind of, you know, not necessarily being able to predict where they put it. Guys can, you know, some are better at disguising the body shape and where they're going to put it and stuff like that. I just think the speed of it as well. And like, I suppose everybody has a safe one. If it's sort of left half back or right half back or whatever, you know, something that they prefer. So again, like each team will have spent a lot of time. Maybe it puts more doubt in the Tyrone minds this week if they don't know who's going to be in goal. Now maybe that's another part of it. There's a bit of psychology going on there, but you know, I suppose the bottom line is, as you were saying, it just isn't great to have the two of them wondering who's going to start on Sunday.
From a Morgan point of view, he has a real ability to. He's running straight at the ball, but he can ping it to the right hand side, right out wide on the jock. So he has that ability to disguise that kick really, really well. And another one that he does is he would be running quite quickly towards the ball, but he's chipping it across his left hand side till probably a Ronan McNamee or a Padraig Campsey who's in that area. So he has a huge array of kicks in his locker, and we know that he can get out over the top of the press as well.
Just before we do get into the team and look at a couple of the matchups on Galway Conleith, is there pressure this weekend after them? People are considering to be all-Ireland champions.
Yeah, look, I think there is a pressure on them. And I think it's more the pressure they put on themselves. You know, they're definitely in the conversation of the top 3 now, based on last year and how they've went this year. But again, there's been some doubts. You know, obviously you have the league final. Then obviously now the Sligo game probably wasn't as competitive as they would need. So Tyrone will have played 1 or 2 games. I know that at a very competitive nature. So I think they'll be a different prospect. So the pressure is on Galway to deliver. They're at home. And if you're looking at their credentials to be possible All-Ireland champions, you ask yourself the question, if Tyrone are going away to Dublin, if Tyrone are going away to play Kerry, who wins that game? And this is the one team who maybe Tyrone maybe fear a wee bit less. So yeah, they would have to show their credentials this weekend. It won't be the end of the world if they don't win, but they would really be setting themselves on a platform to say, yeah, we are serious contenders if we can beat a Tyrone team that have 5 weeks to prepare for us.
And Darragh, you talked about how you really like this Galway team, but there's huge expectation with this team now heading into this weekend at home.
Yeah, look, I suppose that's the way Joyce has built it up in the last while. You know, from the first day he took over, we're going to win All Ireland, and they came up a few minutes short last year. So you know, I think that's the sort of position that they want. You look at like the lads mentioned earlier on, Ian Burke, Peter Cook, they're like new signings. To get them back, you know, from being away and stuff. And I know they've lost others. Malloy might be back and running in straight lines and stuff like that after his ACL thing. But I think that's what he wants. And that's how you find out who the team are and whether they're able to kind of, you know, be able to last the extra 6 minutes and win the All Ireland. So, you know, that's what this year is all about for him. I don't know, will he go beyond this year if they win it or don't win it or whatever? But you know, these are the kind of games we've been waiting for, to see two of the big heavyweights go at it, and I think they will, and really go at it hard. So, you know, look, there is expectation, but you know, that's what he wants. That's what he's been talking the team up for, and he wouldn't want it any other way.
Kyle, do you expect to see any changes to the Tyrone team this weekend from the team that lined out against Monaghan?
You would imagine there will be changes. We spoke slightly about the half forward line. Probably Michael O'Neill lined out at 11. Doesn't play an awful lot of football there. That's not where he plays. He's normally back plugging gaps. You have your Frank Burns and Kieran McGeary. I do think Tyrone need to go that wee bit more offensive. We have Darragh Maloney who seems to be turning into the player that we all know that he can be. McCurry's in form. Cal McShane, I don't know, seems to have went off the boil slightly. If the game plan, you know, is not designed maybe till his strengths, it's a bit harder for him to get into the team. But I would imagine that we're going to see Tyrone with a few changes. It wouldn't surprise me to see the team come out where it's, you know, the same team that lined up against Monaghan, but you've got to have 2 or 3 changes before the throw-in. I don't believe to see Niall Sludden start. I think they're going to use him off the bench, but it'll be the 2 same lads in the middle of the field. You can be sure of that, because that's a partnership that really works for Tyrone. But we need to find another half forward that chips in with 2, 3, 4 points in the game to get us over the line, to take that wee bit of pressure off McCurry having to kick 7 or 8. You know, we need that spread of scores, because we probably don't get it from Brian Kennedy. We might get a point or 2 from Con Kilpatrick. We're going to get a couple, whatever may have, from Darragh Canavan if he can find the net. But we need to find another half forward who can peg on 2 or 3 points to get us over the line in these tight games.
Is it time to introduce Rory Canavan from the start, do you think?
Probably not. Probably not. He came on the last day, and I'm not sure if you know, we talked about Matty Donnelly not being on the pitch, and I watched that game back twice. He was the one, like a sidestep for the ball to be flicked out to the right-hand side for Ryan O'Toole to find the net. If that's Matty Donnelly, there's a good chance he's closing that gap with the frame, the size of the body. You know, Rory Canavan is an impact sub for me at the moment. You know, that's not to say that he doesn't start further down the line when we get to Croke Park. Don't think there's a need for him to start this weekend. You know, if the game's in the sentencing and, you know, 15, 20 minutes to go, all square, and we need a sprinkle of Stardust, he's surely the man. But he's just a wee fraction raw at the moment to start games. I think I could be proved wrong, because he's crazy good. You know, he's exceptional off left and right. He probably, for an inter-county manager, he probably pulls the trigger too sharp, because the stats will be showing, you know, if they're not going over, they're obviously going wide, and teams is all about possession and stats at the moment. So I wouldn't be starting him. I would definitely like to see him introduced at some stage, but that could change.
Do you expect to see many changes just on the Tyrone team, Conleith, this weekend?
Look, I think Kyle made a lot of very good points, but for me, when you look at the Tyrone team that played against Monaghan, it was very much a tried and tested team, but there was nothing fresh, nothing new. I think we're now in a different competition, you know, at a different time, and it's not all or make or break. I genuinely thought that Rory Canavan would make his championship debut from the start against Monaghan, for the point of view of I thought Tyrone would beat Monaghan and it might be too big a game to play Derry. So that's why I thought it. I think he'll make his debut this week because they need something new. If you have Darren McCurry, if you have Darragh Canavan playing at maybe the top of a triangle, leave two inside, Matty Donnelly will work back anyway, and then you can pick your Michael O'Neill's, your Frank Burns's to make it very solid at the back. But that would give you a savage platform to get shooting from range, because Salt Hill, at some point, whichever team wins the toss is going to have a massive breeze. I've never been in Salt Hill where it's been calm. So I think at some stage, if you win the toss, you've got the breeze, you want your sharpshooters on, and Rory Canavan is showing, at All-Ireland level at under-20s, while he is a bit raw, I think they need something different. And add into that, you've McGleenan, you've Joe Goose, you've players like that, like obviously you'd know more about the likes of Steede Motor Group, who played a lot of football in the league. So I think Tyrone have a lot of freshness, they have a lot of legs, and probably the height of insanity is picking the same team again, Monaghan, and expecting a different result. I think they probably need to go for freshness, and it would be something. Even the loss, and it's not the end of the world. They're still in a decent position, and they've blooded more players for the next day.
Just on Galway, Conleith, do you expect similar again from the Connacht final?
Yeah, look, I do expect Paul Conroy to come in from the start, because he has been one of their leaders and talisman. And I would expect John Maher will stay, and I think it'll be Peter Cook moving into that half forward line. And it's whether Matty Tierney goes to 11, Peter Cook goes to 10, and Shane Walsh goes in and takes up a position at either 13 or 14 and wanders out to leave Comer inside. And it'll be probably Rob Finnerty, I would imagine, after Ian Burke's performance the last day, that could lose out. But it just means that he's a serious impact sub. Like, I've seen him in a Sigerson match for DCU, and he was linking up with Lorcan O'Dale, and literally against Queen's University Belfast, between the two of them, the match was over in about 9 minutes. He'd kicked 1-2, and the game was gone. It was just sensational. So he has that in his locker as well, and I think maybe off the bench is probably where he'll be used this weekend.
Darragh, you talked earlier on about how you like watching Killian McDade play, but Killian McDade at 7, it's something we haven't really seen much of, but you could see even in the Sligo game, it's nearly similar to Jack McCaffrey when he gets the ball. McDade goes and he goes straight and just so hard to catch.
Yeah, no, listen, now that he's kind of fully fit again, like that guy would have had that time as a professional athlete in Australia, and is over his injury problems and stuff like that. To me, that's just an indication. It's like Peter Cook playing in the half forward line. If you're putting Killian McDade, who could have been footballer of the year, or was certainly in the mix for it last year, would have been brave to take it off the other two. But you know what I mean? Like, he had a fantastic year. And if you're putting him in your half back line because you don't want to accommodate him in the middle, to me that's a real show of strength, and it does give them that extra attacking option, like the McCaffrey thing, with the pace that he has, and like, he's impossible to stop. The other player who I've loved, I think I mentioned it earlier on, Johnny Heaney's had a great year. And he, the classic half forward, but that fella will run till Tuesday week, and very rarely gives the ball away, always makes the right decision. And again, I'd say he's probably the first name on the team sheet for Pádraig Joyce with what he does for the team. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the two of them play at the weekend, and Kelly and all the rest of them. So I think it's going to be a cracking match, two great teams.
Just on a couple of the matchups, and there has been a thing as well, Kyle, with this Galway forward unit. It's been different players stepping up every day, but there is this fear for teams if this Galway forward line can all click together at once.
Yeah, you'd be fearful if they all did click at once. Damien Comer is a complete handful in the air, on the ground. There's probably nobody better between himself and Colin O'Callaghan. That ball, initial first phase ball, and winning that ball, there's probably nobody any better than the two of them, and he's going to be a handful for whoever picks him up at the weekend. I would imagine it'll probably, if fit, Padraig Hampsey, to be able to wrestle and be that physical person. It could be Ronan McNamee, but if Shane Walsh is playing a bit of football inside, he could go there. He's picked him up a number of times in the league for Tyrone before. So
do you expect Conor Myler to man-mark Killy McDade at the weekend?
It's hard to know, because he could do. Myler has that cross-country background from his past, and again, you'll be sure that when the GPS stats come in after the game on Thursday or on Saturday evening, Myler will be up in and around 12, 13, 14k. That's the kind of distance that he covers in games. It's just Myler can also could do a job in Shane Walsh where he could put him a wee bit on the back foot going the other way and hurt Galway. But Tyrone sometimes sacrifice Myler in the wrong way, in my opinion, because he has the ability now in his locker to kick 2 points on the other end, as well as doing a man-marking job. He has been carrying a bit of a niggle. Whether that has any part to play as well, I'm not sure. So matchups are going to be key. I had the matchups the wrong way around the last day in the Monaghan game. I had Padraig Hampshire down to mark Conor McManus. Didn't work out like that. So Tyrone do flick. They will go between the two Tigers, between Ronan McNamee and Padraig Hampshire. So it's, if they can get their matchups right. On the other hand, they obviously have Darragh McCurry, Darragh Kennevan, and as Conor thinks Kennevan could be in from the start. It gives them something to think about on the other hand.
And there's been a thing with Galway's man-marking players, Conleith. It's very much kind of been this year. Whoever's in that position is nearly just marking that player.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of the matchups for me, I think Sean Kelly will see Darragh McCurry as the player that they need to sort out. He's obviously their top scorer. He had, before the last day, had not 32, so he's their top scorer. I think it'll be Sean Kelly to pick him up. And then after that, I think Jack Glynn would probably go to Darragh Kennevan and maybe try, and when he goes out, to go with him. But Derry have showed the interesting part now of defending is that if you've got somebody with legs and you've got somebody with that appetite for work, you could put them on the back foot. And what Derry have done over the last number of games, for me, as you talked about, Kyle, Conor Myler goes on Shane Walsh and he drives him the other way. Shane Walsh probably, he has the legs to cover him, but he doesn't want to be going back there. So I think there could be an element of teams now starting to watch Derry and go, right, which one of these forwards is least mobile or least able to cover ground, and go after them that way. I think the matchups on the other side, I think Hampshire will go on Comer. And then after that, it'll be whoever else is in there. Myler, for me, definitely on Shane Walsh. But the interesting bit in this Galway team is, I think maybe Darragh touched on it, is that all the forwards are so good. They all want to do the alpha male role. So like the next day, if the first free kick comes, who takes it? Does Matty Tierney hit it or does Shane Walsh hit it? And that kind of is a signal of intent from the manager, who he trusts the most. Like in the last day, Matty Tierney gets 2-7, Shane Walsh kicks 2 frees, and he takes over that role. And very much like the Ulster final, Rian O'Neill didn't take the first free, it was Turbot. Turbot actually kicked it wide. And all of a sudden, you could see Turbot's confidence shrinking a wee bit and didn't have the game. Turbot kicks that free over, his confidence is up all day. So there's all those wee things that is maybe unsure in Galway, which sounds strange. Whereas in Tyrone, there's absolutely no doubt if there's a free, who's going to stand over it, who's going to kick it. So I think the unknowns for Tyrone are maybe a wee bit less in that regard.
You have an advantage there, Conleith, where you can have 2 players taking a free, or is it a disadvantage that you don't know who's taking it?
No, look, you have one free taker and he's the man and he takes them, because if you have one free taker and you have Shane Walsh behind you, first one you miss, it's in your head, and if you miss the second one, you know you're not getting the third. So I think the mentality of free takers are, you're the man they trust, you hit it and you be sure of it, because if there's any doubt, it'll creep into your mind. And I don't care how mentally strong a player you are, if you don't think you have the trust of the people around you, it will eventually break you.
Pep Guardiola says Halland's the penalty taker.
Not the day Gundogan took one.
He was going mad. He was going mad, saying you've got to take it. And look, that's probably, I know we're probably going back to even to the Shane Walsh free kick where he took it off his so-called weaker side. You know, if it's the All-Ireland semi-final or All-Ireland final, is he taking it with his stronger foot? And I think he is. I think he just wanted to showcase, I can do this off either foot, you know. And that's Matty Tierney is another, you know, puzzle for Tyrone to solve, because if he's on form, he's some option for kickouts as well. Do you know what I mean? He can be in those pockets, pulling kickouts, taking marks, and automatically setting it up again. So 2-7 the last day out will have done his confidence no harm, because previously probably hadn't hit the heights that he had wanted to hit in his own regard, because, you know, at inter-county level, to be, you know, in the bracket of the top number of players, you have to put the games consistently back to back, and that's probably what just he had been lacking.
And Kyle, is it a match up there with Michael McKiernan?
Probably so, because Michael would play a lot of football, club football for Tyrone on the front foot at half back. Can play a lot of football also in the middle of the field. Very, very comfortable on the ball and can take a score. And one thing you can be sure about Michael is he let him know he's there. There'll be a few nice words about the weather and stuff, I'm sure, that he'll let him know. But it's a matchup that I would be looking to, you know, to curtail Matthew Tierney. Also bringing one of my probably better ball players, more comfortable players out into an area of the pitch that you know, really, really comfortable, really strong runner, can break lanes. So that will be one of my matchups. I will be playing Michael McKiernan in the, you know, if he does line out a cornerback, surely, but I will be giving him a man marking job of Matty Tierney and saying, look, let's see what he's like going the other way, get on the end of a score, and see what he wants to do from there.
Conleith, over to you. Who's going to win it on Saturday?
Look, on form, it's very hard to look past Galway. They're at home. They'll have trained there all week. They will know the pitch inside out. So I think they'll probably edge it. I don't think it probably is as damaging to Tyrone not to win that game as it is to Galway for their confidence. So for that reason, I think Galway will just shade it. But I think it'll be very, very tight. But it'll be really interesting to see what Tyrone have done in the 5 weeks, how their team has changed, because injury, form, players look, it's a long time for players not to have competitive games. So this is the new format. So it'll be very interesting this weekend to see how it's affected those teams that have had that long rest, and if it's been an advantage or a disadvantage.
And Darragh, who's going to win it for you?
Me and predictions not good, Paul. So I'll sit on the fence. I'll say a draw. No, look, I think this is where you're really going to see this thing take off. I know, as Conleith says, the wind in Salt Hill, the conditions will be challenging, interesting. I've been there in the middle of July and it's been 30 degrees and there's still a wind blowing, and it still feels cold. It's like being up on the 7th floor in Croke Park. But no, listen, I couldn't possibly. I think it's going to be tight enough. Maybe home advantage will have a bearing on the thing, as Conleith says, because the Galway lads know that place so well. But not by much if it is Galway.
And Kyle?
You're not really going to ask me, are you?
Yeah. Well, you should just.
That's why you're getting paid the big money.
Nah, I'm doing this for the love of the game. Form at the moment would definitely point you towards the Galway, obviously.
I knew you'd go for them.
Siege mentality, I told you that before, back in the wall. Form would definitely be in the favour of Galway. I think Tyrone have only played them 4 times in the championship, and they've won 3 times and been beat once, but that means little till what's happening in current times. But I think Tyrone will have gone away in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and yes, they'll have done a lot of hard work, but it's got to come down to getting a better structure up front in games to get them over the line. You know, they had Conor McKenna, they had Cathal McShane in 2021. They don't have they don't have Conor McKenna, they don't have Cathal McShane to the extent that he's not starting games. I know he didn't start much then, but he was in decent form. But I'm going to say this game's going to go really, really to the wire. That's pretty obvious. I'm fancying maybe just a slight Galway victory, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if Tyrone nipped a win, because they'll have 5 weeks to prepare mentally to get their backs against the wall and come out swinging, and they'll want to put a marker down. Yes, this is the championship starting now. Ulster Championship, we get knocked out, but we can still win the All-Ireland, and you'll know that any Tyrone team that goes out, they'll have that mentality that we can win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, no, it definitely does feel like a really close game this weekend. That game taking place on Saturday between Galway and Tyrone, 5:15 Imperial Stadium. But that's all we have time for today on our podcast. A massive thank you to the three lads for coming on.
The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.